It wasn't a knockout blow. It wasn't a highlight reel submission. It was a jab. A simple, repetitive, almost boring punch. And it was the single biggest reason one of the greatest fighters of all time was almost impossible to beat. What can we learn from a weapon that's more about consistency than it's about flash?
Steel and shadow, fists fly high, breaking through limits, I reach for the sky. Martial instincts power my stride, fight principles guiding my fight.
Welcome to the Fight Principles podcast, the podcast where we break down the strategies of MMA, martial arts, combat sports, and apply them to life. Today we're talking about a man who was, or still is, in the GOAT discussion, the greatest of all times, Georges St-Pierre, or GSP. If you watch his legendary career in the UFC, you know what it was like to see his opponents after a fight. They weren't just beaten, they were dismantled. They were systemically taken apart, piece by piece. And the tool he used to do it, more often than not, was the jab. Pop, 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 over and over and over again. For his opponents, that was pretty maddening. They had trained for his world-class wrestling, for his explosive kicks, for his incredible athleticism, but they couldn't get past the jab. It kept them at a distance. It disrupted their rhythm. It set up every other part of GSP's game. It was, for all intents and purposes, a boring move. It was a fundamental. And in a world that's obsessed with the spectacular, we have forgotten the profound power of mastering the mundane. We live in the age of the life hack, the shortcut, the secret formula for overnight success. We want the results of GSP's championship belts, but we have no patience for the thousands upon thousands of hours he spent in a quiet gym perfecting one simple punch. We want the thriving business, but we don't want to make the daily sales calls. We want a healthy body, but we don't want to do the daily meal prep. We want a strong relationship, but we don't want to have the small daily conversations. We look for the haymaker, the knockout punch, while ignoring the jab. And today, we're going to fix that. We're going to explore the fight principle of the GSP jab and how finding and mastering your own fundamental jab is the real success in any field. So how do we do it, right? How do we adapt this mindset? And it starts with the first and most crucial step. You must identify your jab in every area of your life. Professional, personal. There's a core, a fundamental activity that everything else is built upon. The problem is, it's often so fundamental that we overlook it. We take it for granted. If you're a writer, your jab isn't being creative, your jab is putting words on the page every day. If you're a leader, your jab isn't strategy, it's clear communication with your team. If you're in sales, your jab is the initial outreach, the first call, the first email. So what is the single most important repetitive action that leads to success in your field? Be honest, it's probably not the most exciting part of your job. It's the equivalent of hitting the heavy bag in an empty gym. So take a minute this week to really think about, what's the one skill set, if you were 10% better at it, would improve every other aspect of your work? That is in jab. And just like a fighter, once you identified it, your entire training plan kind of gotta revolve around it. And that was already the first 5 principles of this episode. This brings us to the second principle, which is arguably the hardest, you have to drill it relentlessly and embrace deliberate practice. It's one thing to know your jab is important. It's another thing to have the discipline to practice it when no one's watching. GSP didn't just throw a million jabs. He threw a million jabs with intention. His coach, Firas talks about this constantly. They would analyze the timing, the footwork, the shoulder position, the angle. Every single repetition was an attempt to make it 1% better. That's the concept of deliberate practice. It's not just going through the motions. It's focused, mindful repetition with a specific goal of improvement. So now, how do we apply this in our lives? Well, let's say your jab is writing effective emails. You don't just type them out and hit send. You practice deliberately. You might read a book on, you might read a website, an article on business writing. You might analyze emails from people you admire. You reread your own email before you hit send and ask, is this as clear as it can be? Is my CTA, my call to action, obvious? You turn a mundane task into a training session. If your jab is public speaking, you don't just wing it. You record yourself. You ask for feedback. You practice in front of a mirror. You treat every presentation not as a performance, but as a sparring session, a chance to get better. The unsexy truth of success is that it's built on a mountain of boring, deliberate work. The world doesn't celebrate the hours GSP spent in the gym. It celebrates the belts he won because of them. So you have to learn to love the process, not just the outcome. So hey, you've identified your jab and you're practicing it deliberately. Awesome. Now for the final principle, the one that ties it all together, you have to understand that the fundamental sets everything else up. Jab on its own rarely ends a fight. That's not its purpose. Its purpose is to create openings for the things that do end fights. The GSP's jab would force his opponents to raise their hands to block it, which created an opening for a takedown. Or it would make them so worried about the takedown that they'd lower their hands, create an opening for a head kick. The simple move made the complex moves possible. It's exactly the same in life. Your mastery of clear communication, your jab, creates an opening for a promotion because your boss trusts you with more responsibility. Your discipline with your daily finances, your jab, creates the opening to buy a house or start a business. Your consistency with your health and fitness, your jab, creates the opening for a long and energetic life. We often get frustrated because we feel like we're not making progress. We're doing the daily work, the boring stuff, but we're not seeing the big, spectacular results. That's because you're looking at the jab and expecting a knockout. Trust the process. Unless you're Ben Simmons. Trust the process. Understand that every time you execute your fundamental, you're creating an opening. You might not see it just yet, but you're building the foundation for your power moves. Your dedication to the simple things is what will eventually unlock the spectacular things. So let's recap. The path to mastery isn't a secret. It's a principle. And it's a principle that Georges St-Pierre, GSP, embodied. Principle 1, identify your jab. Find the single most important fundamental skill in your field. Don't overthink it. It's probably the thing you do most often. Principle 2, drill it relentlessly. Embrace deliberate practice. Turn that mundane task into a training session. Find joy in the 1% improvement, okay? And 3, trust that the fundamental sets everything up. Your consistency with the simple things is what creates the openings for the big victories. So your call to action now is pretty simple. don't try to change everything. Just identify your jab, write it down, and for maybe a week, bring a new level of focus and intention to that one single task. See how it feels. See how it changes things around you. You stop looking for the knockout. Start perfecting the jab. That's all for this episode of Fight Principles. Thank you once again for your time, your attention, your dedication to listening. If this episode resonated with you, the best way to support would always be to subscribe, leave a comment, rate it, and share with someone who might needs to hear some of those things. Feel free to continue the conversation, of course, on social media at Fight Principles. I'd love to hear what you have identified as your personal jab, so shout out with that, please. Until next time, keep your guard up, focus on the fundamentals. We talk soon.
Steel and shadow, fists fly high, breaking through limits, I reach for the sky. Martial instincts power my stride. Fight principles guiding my fight.